All right, we're live. Post AEW Dynasty, Jeremy Finestone and Double G here with our brand new AEW recap show, which, at least for right now, we're calling the Scrum Show. We'll see. Scrumptious. We didn't want to be too cute like the beginning of that triple threat match for King's title. But why are we doing this? Well, the Boom, which previously was our AEW recap show. That show is on hiatus because our beloved Kevin Ely needed to step away from the microphone. I'm not sure if he's fully retiring. I don't know if he's doing the Terry Funk thing where he's going to come back. But, Kevin's...
His neck is fine, by the way. There's no, injuries to the neck that's going to require him to retire or anything like that.
Oh, yeah. Kevin Ely, Kevin Owens. Oh, I see what you did there. So basically, until if Kevin decides that he has some time, he will get the spot back, and he and Jeremy will probably be the twosome here. But until then, we wanted to create something. I don't want to do a show called The Boom without Kevin, so we created something different. We're calling it the Scrum Show. We're also going to do this show a little differently than normal post pay-per-view recaps, because we did a show a couple weeks ago called The Watch Back, and I really liked the way that show flowed, and that show was really based around questions. And so we're going to talk about everything that happened on this show, but we're going to do it in sort of question format. I like the kind of the threads that it creates. So I wanted to start with what the headlines would have been or would be for this show. If you thought of this show as news, as sports news, what would the big major takeaways be? And then what headlines would be created from the show? And the first one that I thought, you have to start with the end of the main event, which is the Young Bucks are back.
They are.
They came back to help Jon Moxley
inexplicably
keep his world title, as Swerve looked like he was about to win the world title after Hangman Page had interfered late in the match when the referee was knocked out. And then the lights went out. I don't know who you thought it was going to be. I did like 3 or 4 people, and I was like, nope, Malachi Black, not in AEW anymore. Can't be him. And it wasn't, but actually, I sort of called the Bucks coming in.
You did.
Probably about a minute before they actually did.
My guy was Jack Perry, who it was not.
I feel like your guy's always Jack Perry. One of these times you're going to be right.
Hey, stop clock is right twice a day, Garrett.
Hey, but that one time you're going to look like a genius.
I'm going to look amazing. It's going to be fantastic.
So
gratifying.
So my headline, I think, is just simply, the Bucks are back. That would be my headline. And I don't know what they're going to do. Like, as far as, we were talking off air about how they left. Remind the people about when they left and how they left and why they left. And I guess we'll try and piece together some of the things as far as what is happening or what could happen Wednesday on Dynamite.
So we were about 2 weeks into the Moxley reign of terror with the Death Riders, and the Bucks were put in a match with Private Party around the end of October, Freaky Friday episode of Dynamite, and they lost. And I believe at the end of that episode, they were seen haphazardly shredding documents and packing their bags. And if you've been watching AEW Dynamite, you haven't seen them ever since. They've shown up in New Japan a couple of times and done a couple of matches for them, but this is the first time since October that the Young Bucks have been on AEW television.
So what do we think is the reason why they interrupted this show and helped the big bad who chased them off when they were last on television win the match?
The only thing that I can guess is something pedantic, like, you say this is your house, but this is our house kind of thing. And they're just trying to take back that this is their division, and whatever Swerve has done is nothing compared to what they've done, because there's literally no other reason to me as to why you're manufacturing a feud unless you want to get to a match and you are just getting that match one way or another.
I've seen a theory that they were actually the brains and power behind Moxley's crew as far as them having the run of the whole show. But that doesn't explain why they were run off of the show.
The reveal doesn't make any sense then. You know, like they came in near the end of the match to conclude the match for Moxley.
Yes.
But then they just left. There was no dynamic of acquiescing one way or another. It was just Moxley happened to be the person benefiting from the action, not a coordinated effort between the three.
Well, the part that you missed was Matt and Nick went to Too Sweet Moxley and he just flipped them off. That's what they didn't show on television. So what it could be is simply something about Hangman then.
Could be. Maybe they're white knighting for Hangman, where it's like you're against our guy and we're gonna cost you. It seems like you're getting a little too melodrama between Hangman and Swerve and the Young Bucks that way, when you just kind of just want to have a wrestling match.
Isn't that what the AEW fans believe are like the best storylines they've ever done, or like these kind of melodrama-y stories?
I think that is absolutely the case, but it needs to be born of like some bit of natural like progression. You're forcing this just by having the Bucks show up and like cost Swerve the match. You know, the ambiguity of Hangman notwithstanding, they clearly did, and then we're gonna find out why.
In Blood and Guts, did Swerve make Matt Jackson quit?
He could have.
I'm trying to remember because there could be a callback to Blood and Guts, and this was the way they got him back. I'm not someone who remembers every AEW storyline. I don't remember WWE ones either. But if you give me like 1991 WCW, I'm there. I can remember all of those.
There's a bit of trauma and scattershot from trying to remember what the lineage of 2022 or 2023 and 2024 AEW was. Like just trying to go back and relive the feud between Hangman and Swerve is going to require a doctoral thesis, and it's a lot of effort, and it's everything that you want. And so when Hangman came out at the end of the evening, it was that moment, just like on Dynamite, where that was the natural progression of stories that you want. The Young Bucks entrance into the feud, whether it be something with Anarchy in the Arena, a big group, or, you know, all roads leading to All In, and we're getting Swerve and Hangman versus the Young Bucks there. It just feels like they needed a start point, and this was going to be the start point to move Swerve out of the main event and then kickstart the Hangman and Swerve partnership. It feels like the Young Bucks were the proxy team and the best choice rather than like the team designed for this all along.
Here's an interesting thing, and we were watching this with Big Dave and John LaRocca, Miguel Rubio were there, and Main Event Mary came at the end.
Main Event Mary.
She comes right at the end of the show every time. Last pay-per-view, you had this very fan appreciation pay-per-view. Like you rarely see a pay-per-view that gets such high marks across the board than AEW Revolution. And so when Moxley beats Adam Copeland, and those same fans who loved 99% of that show, they were so mad that Moxley escaped with the title. And I saw some legitimate complaints of like, this is going on too long. I can't believe this is happening. They're ruining this whole thing. And so the reason why I think the show is still remembered fondly is because the they liked the other part of the show so much, and it kind of overshadowed this main event. I'm not sure this show was as good in their minds and in the hardcore fan base's minds to overshadow Swerve, who is a dandy, who is a fan dandy, losing. There was so much buildup earlier today on how it was Swerve's time. He's going to win. They almost like they're kind of like trying to will him, like you would in in real sports, right? This is like, willing Barry Zito in 2012 to win a game, for the Giants. Like everyone just like,
or like fan casting a movie studio into getting your guy into the movie role, like at the last minute, like making the change. And
so I am wondering, I've looked a little bit on Twitter, and there seems to be lots of frustration with how that main event was booked. But I do wonder tomorrow morning when we wake up if the fans are going to be more fed up than they were after Revolution.
I think it's all about how you're like approaching this. Revolution is an A-level pay-per-view, right? Like it's one of probably arguably the big four. I can't remember the last time a Revolution has really disappointed. It was one of the first four that the AEW ever had. This was not an A show. This was a B show. And as I was driving home from watching it with everybody, it occurred to me, this was a $50 teaser trailer for All In. And that's what Double or Nothing is going to be as well. Like we are all setting up these matches that you're going to go see in 2 months in Texas. And if you look up and down the line of this card, you're setting up all these guys for their matches in some way, shape, or form for not the next pay-per-view, but for the pay-per-view after. And that's the design, like the old WWF design from like the 80s and 90s, the in your houses and all that. And we basically got like an in your house level pay-per-view out of AEW. And that's fine. You just can't offer that all the time.
So my guess, and this is what I said after Revolution, which is I finally saw the journey, or I saw the idea of how this thing is going to be paid off. My worry was, will the fans be patient enough to get through this show and Double or Nothing before you get to All In, or will they be so bothered? I'm going to guess that they're going to be fine. By the time All In comes, they'll be ready. There will be a great spot that's gonna make them believe that this is all for naught, and that Will's gonna kick out at 2.99999 against Moxley, and people are gonna lose their mind. But I do think, like, I see where this thing is going, and I think people need to be patient. But it almost feels like their patience is up with Jon Moxley as champion. It's just something to kind of look at over the next few months.
So do you think enough breadcrumbs were laid out tonight that the goodwill will go at least to All In, or I'm sorry, not All In, Double or Nothing, where it's going to be abundantly clear what these matches are going to be happening?
I think what they're going to give them is whatever this new brochachos is with Hangman and Swerve, or the frenemies, or
Omega Hangman, but substitute Swerve,
right? Which, to me, as someone who watches this product as closely as I do, it's ridiculous that these guys don't just kill each other every time they see each other. But there's this moment on the last Dynamite where they finally came to some sort of common ground. And it had to do with burning somebody's house down. And he's like, yeah, you're right. I was wrong.
Yeah, I know.
So, okay. So next headline for me off of this show would be FTR turns on Edgeland. Edgeland is my nickname for Copeland, because people didn't like when I was calling him Cope Daddy. They were very down on that name. So I was trying to figure out, what do we call him? You can't call him Adam C. So he has Edge on every single one of his T-shirts. So I'm just going with Edgeland for right now.
How come we didn't go with Adge?
Adge. Wow.
ADGE.
That would have been quite funny. But they've been teasing this, or not, they haven't even really been teasing it. We're just following the breadcrumbs, like you said. They've done a really good job at leading fans to believe that this is something that is going to happen. So much so that the fans were booing when Cash interrupted Dax as if they were not going to beat up the babyface.
Right.
The fans actively booed. And then when it turned out that he just wanted them to use a different move to beat up the babyface, then they cheered.
Mm-hmm.
So your babyface, Adam Copeland, Edgeland, he was cheered going on a stretcher or whatever. Well, I don't remember if he went out on a stretcher, but he was badly.
They mocked the stretcher, like Cash put on the neck brace, and then he got on the stretcher, and then, screw it, this guy needs it more. And then they put Copeland on the stretcher and took him out. Yeah. I have a very similar headline that's going to piggyback on that. But yeah, do you have more thoughts on what you were going to say?
No, go ahead. What's your headline?
The summer of tag teams. We have a lot of possible tag team matches coming up if they play their cards right.
Edgeland and Christian, you're thinking?
You could get to Edge, Edge and Christian, Swerve and Hangman, the Young Bucks, FTR, all with the Hurt Syndicate.
What about Crew? Crew's like, hey man, you're leaving us out.
No, this is an argument for a junior tag team heavyweight division. There's the top flight titles, and then there's the tag team titles.
It would be nice, and you know what? Even though I didn't actually watch a Collision match, but I don't know if there needs to be a women's tag title. I'd actually say you probably don't need it, but I love the idea of Mercedes and Harley just as like the odd couple.
Yeah.
Like
the Rock and Sock connection, if somebody mentioned.
I'm so into the idea that I can't wait to see what they do now. Yeah. Now watch them not do it. All right, my next headline would be Toni Storm channels her inner Rocky.
Yes.
And comes from behind to beat Megan Bayne. And I'm not going to say that this was a fantastic match, but it did its job. It's like one of those things where you're like, here's how we should do this match because this is how both women will stay over. Mm-hmm. And they did exactly what you wanted. Now, I of course, me being a Rocky fanatic, I loved the video, and we'll bring that video up later, where she's doing her, her Rocky training, and then she comes out in the same trunks colors from Rocky 2, the black and the gold, which, by the way, those were the same colors of the original version of Fight Game Media website. Back then, it was called fightgameblog.com. My color specifically for the design of the website was, let's do some Rocky 2 colors. That was actually what I wanted. So way back in the day,
that's a deep cut right there.
And Megan Bayne as the monster. You know what's funny is, like, I don't know how tall she really is, but like, I think it's just because Toni Storm is so small, so short. Megan Bayne looks like an Amazon woman, but I think if you had her in like normal regular clothes, like, she wouldn't look as big, but she looks impressive in the gear and in her
right.
Yes, and I thought the facials were really good from her. I thought her frustration came across, like, how's this little shit keep kicking out of all of these moves? And then the way that she lost, we'd sort of all predicted that as we were watching the match. You could see that that's where they were leading, where Toni as the champion outsmarts the big goof. I said it reminded me a lot of the very first Cena and Lesnar match when Lesnar came back from the UFC, where Brock is just killing this dude, and he does pull it out at the end. So I love the story. I think the story was better than the match, but it was exactly what they needed to do. And, you know, Toni Storm, I know there's still some people who don't like the character. She does such a tremendous job in everything from the presence to the way that she sells to her promos and her persona. Like I've always been a Toni Storm fan, but she's killing it. And I think it needs to continue to be said.
I thought the video before the match where the montage was one of the first times I really connected with her, like, as a character, because she was like, it felt like she was getting up and getting into the role of Toni Storm when I realized it was more getting into the role of training and like aping of the movie, right? But still the feeling that I had of just like, oh, I'm connecting with the person rather than the persona, which has been my main issue, is that it just feels so much like an act that I feel like I'm not in on the joke rather than like playing along with it. And this was a time where I didn't feel that way, and it was a lot more familiar to me just to feel comfortable in watching the match. And, you know,
are you saying that Bret Hart would say that Toni Storm is doing too much acting?
I think Bret Hart has a lot of opinions about a lot of things that shockingly have nothing to do with how that matters of what he does in the ring. In the ring. No, they had a job where they had to make Megan Bayne look imposing and threatening without defanging her in this match, because she can be very viable going forward. And she probably will be a world champion at AEW at some point, just given what she has to offer for the company. This was an audition for her in a lot of ways of being presented as a big-time star in a way that, you know, they didn't have the confidence of, say, like a Camille. And I think she is going to get a lot more opportunities, and at the same time, she's going to get better in the company. And so this was a success for everyone all around.
Imagine if instead of Camille, Megan Bayne was Mercedes's heater. I think that would have worked a lot better.
I think so too.
But and this is not a shot at Camille. I think she was just miscast. I think what they tried to do is they tried to redo the Aldis thing with her, and she just needed more depth as a character to do that in this company. And yeah, she's this miscast. I hope for her that she gets another opportunity, because I do think, you know, if you watch the Queen of the Ring, she did a good job in that movie. So
I've got no issues what Camille did or did not have to offer AEW. Their decision to use her and then not use her is completely predicated on what they thought her value was, and that's simply their perception of her value, not the actual truth, whether it is the truth or not.
All right, my last headline, and I'll give the results of the other matches before we get to our questions. My last headline is Omega Man and the Okada Man is set. Now, it's not actually set, but we are led to believe that this thing is coming. And Lady B has a comment in the chat, and we were talking about how indie-rific certain spots were in this match, and Lady B, she said she called it adorable.
She called it precious in the chat during the show. I called it cute. And what did you call it?
I don't remember. Probably something.
You also had something also.
Probably something mean.
It just felt like we had two mid-carders wrestling with Kenny Omega.
Yes, in certain spots, because they were doing these very choreographed spots, which were not easy to pull off, by the way, because the thing about Speedball Mike Bailey and Ricochet is they have impeccable timing on their moves. Like, to do the unique high-flying moves, which in some perspective, it could be a little bit too much, but the timing of it and the degree of difficulty that they can hit these things on is amazing. But, I forgot, because from now on any fight game podcaster, Fight Game Moss podcaster, anything that I'm doing with the opportunity that mentions Ricochet, you automatically get this drop. All right. So the match in of itself went over 30 minutes. So there were cute spots, and then at the end felt really long. But at the end of the day, it was a way for Omega to win. Neither Speedball or Ricochet were worse for their wear.
No.
Speedball kind of getting hooked into the top rope on his own, like for no real reason. I unless I missed something, was kind of goofy at the end, but Omega.
He was just so exhausted that he could not have the core strength to free himself.
Well, I called the Avalanche One-Winged Angel. I don't know, about 5 seconds before Excalibur did. I felt like Excalibur and I were kind of on the same page. I don't know if that's good or bad. But the
it's
Avalanche,
better than being on the same page with Toni Schiavone. So.
Yeah, well, we'll have some more commentary about
yes, we will.
one Toni Schiavone, Schiavone. But so Omega wins. Okada comes out. Music plays. Did they look in each other's eyes for like 1 second? Like, was it even 1 second?
They were given a time cue. As long as they were able to look at each other, take that shot, get the all-in banner right behind them, and then they can cut it into a larger video package. They got what they needed. But they were moving on. They were moving.
So obviously you host, speaking of strong style, with Stephen Conway. A big part of my I would say my rebirth as a wrestling fan. I was always a wrestling fan, but there were pockets of time where I was like, why am I watching this crap? Like, this is really bad. And the Omega Okada stuff, actually, it was more the Okada Tanahashi stuff was so great. But then you move on to Omega Okada, and I was like, okay, this is what I wish US wrestling was like. I would be so much more into it. It feels like a sport. It feels like it's meaningful. And so on the watch back that we did a couple weeks ago, we were going through this time frame of like 2018, 2019. And Madison Square Garden, the ROH and New Japan combined show was originally going to be headlined by Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada. That's right. What the match was going to be at that show. I was at that show. I was like so excited. Now, Jay White and Okada was fine. It was a fine, if you do have a replacement for Kenny Omega, Jay White was a fine replacement for Kenny Omega. But still, like that felt like first time in US soil. They just had all these great matches. They broke the scale like 3 different times. And then it didn't happen. And now here we are 6 years later. It'll be a little bit over 6 years later by the time the match actually does happen at All In. Let's wrap these guys in bubble wrap, please. Like, let's make sure it happens this time, because I know there's a lot of folks who are kind of like, not feeling it. But I guarantee you, the second these dudes lock up, people are going to be in.
Big match feel.
It's going to feel
special.
Like we turn the clock back, 7 years.
Hopefully.
I think it is. I think before they even lock up, the crowd's going to do all this crazy chants about, fight forever and this is awesome. And it's going to have, like, before they even touch, and they're going to milk it, and they're going to have a masterpiece, because now here's what's going to be actually fun. And I don't know if we'll actually have the time to do this, but I guarantee you this match, when they do it, they're going to have so many callbacks to the previous matches, because when Dave and I talked to Kenny about this, he said, yeah, we got meat on the bone still. Like we have all of these different ideas to continue doing these matches. So I think that's going to be a thing, man. People are underestimating what this is going to feel like when we get there.
I'm with you. I think there was enough in this match that was serious that you're going to see with Kenny Omega. But when Kenny Omega went back to Japan 2 years ago and had the match with Will Ospreay. And Okada had his match with Danielson, the next night at Korakuen Hall, Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada had a tag team match together in kind of a mystery vortex, like team up match. And there were aspects of this match tonight that made me think of that Kenny Omega was wrestling rather than the one that was wrestling at Wrestle Kingdom the night before. And that was what my issue was with this match, was it didn't feel like there was any real sense of risk that Kenny Omega was going to lose this match and that his streak going into All In to showdown with Okada was in any like real sense of jeopardy. I don't know what match he has lined up for Double or Nothing and Okada, but they both should have some kind of heater match that reflects, facing each other at the pay-per-view next time around. And then at some point in the pay-per-view, after they both had their match, they face each other down. Like, that's theoretically what we should be having here, right?
Let's not forget about my bubble wrap comment, though.
Do you not do a match with them going into it? Like, Okada hasn't really even had a match in
he hasn't had a match in a little while. I don't know what I don't know if I don't know if you don't want them to touch, so you don't want them to be in like trios match against each other. Though it'd be pretty great if they were, because you'd put some good wrestlers in there. I don't know what they do. I just know that I can't wait to get to where they're going, because
it's gonna be big when they do.
Yeah.
Like, that All In show is gonna be fantastic with the card that they have lined out. Like, we'll talk about what you can read, like the tea leaves.
Yeah.
But I think we have 6 or 7 matches that if you just sit there and think about it, it's right there for you.
All right, let's go through the rest of these results. So we talked about Moxley. He beat Swerve in just over 31 minutes, with the Bucks coming in, with Hangman coming in. Kenny Omega defeated Ricochet and Speedball in 31 minutes as well. So those last 2 matches lasted in ring time over an hour combined. So AEW International Championship. We've also heard that the International Championship and Okada's Continental Championship could actually be combined when they face each other. I know lots of people are talking about that as being rumored, so that would be interesting as well. More room
for another title somewhere else.
Oh gosh, what? I mean, you could. You don't need. Yeah, you don't
need women's tag titles, junior tag titles,
hardcore championship. I don't know. Adam Cole defeated Daniel Garcia to win the TNT championship. I joked before the show, because we did a little bit of a priority, and I said that my 3 main priorities for this show were Briscoe and Fletcher was number 1. Turned out to be what I thought was the best match on the show. Number 2 was Toni Storm and Megan Bayne, because I was very curious about what they were going to do, which they did a good job. And number 3 was, I think it was the opener, Kevin Knight and Ospreay, because I wanted to see how they were going to handle that. But then I also said, what's going to be the one match that you're not that excited about? And I mentioned that when Dave used to write, he used to write jokes, a lot more humor than he does today, because I think people get their feelings hurt. But he used to have this joke where a match was going on and he would say, "Oh, I don't remember what happened because I went and made a sandwich." And that was like his joke about how this match was really bad. So I mentioned, what was going to be the match where I would go make a sandwich, and it was Cole and Garcia. Not because they're not good wrestlers. They are good wrestlers. I've just not been interested in the feud. I don't like Adam Cole's ankle thing. I think Daniel Garcia, at one time when he was leaning into the dance a little bit more, he was showing some charisma, but then he went away from the dance, and I think he's actually gone backwards a little bit in the charisma. So I wasn't interested at all, but they had a solid match. It was just in the wrong spot of the show, and it only went 15 minutes, but it was like a 15-minute match that felt like 25.
This was a Collision main event, and that's fine. It was a very good Collision main event, but I felt like I was watching the audience just waiting for this to be over. Mm-hmm. And we had a match in which was predicated on the guy not being able to finish the match in 20 minutes, constantly begging for more time. And then He beat Kim Queen in 15 minutes.
Yes.
I'm confused for a number of reasons. There's nothing about this Adam Cole version that makes me think he's either a particularly good babyface or a particularly good heel. He's just kind of existing. And I'm very worried about Daniel Garcia's upward trajectory because his trajectory, while he had a title, did not seem upward whatsoever. And now that he doesn't have a title, it continues to not feel upward at all.
How much of this, maybe of us not being interested, is because this feud is entirely a Collision feud, and we know that Collision probably is half the audience of Dynamite when you kind of add up all the numbers. If you're not watching Collision, you're not really seeing anything. And I'm not saying because of the Collision stuff that I watch, and I'm not saying that what they were doing was fantastic or anything, but when the thing happens on the B show, it just makes it feel less important to folks, I think.
This is not an indictment on Daniel Garcia, and this is not an indictment on Adam Cole. But I think a lot of people were just kind of seeing who wins this match and who wins the title to see who to care about going forward because they weren't sure to care about either one of these guys. Mm-hmm. And so Daniel Garcia is the guy that's like, you know what? You're in the rearview mirror. Now Adam Cole can have a title and, you know, be Adam Cole with a championship belt with his friends, and you can decide if he wants to be heel or face, but you're not splitting the interest between two lukewarm babyface-ish characters. Now you have a guy to get behind, and now you have a guy that you have to rebuild if you choose to rebuild him whatsoever.
All right. We had Kyle Fletcher beating Mark Briscoe in 16-15 in an Owen Hart Cup tournament match. We'll get to that in a little bit. Timeless Toni Storm beat Megan Bayne 15-25.
You missed one.
Oh, I did miss one.
You missed a good one.
Bandido beat Chris Jericho 18-15.
Ugh.
Title versus mask. We will get to this one as well. We have a special question that I'm guessing the answer will be this match. Death Riders beat Rated FTR. This is where we mentioned the FTR beat up Edgeland. Mercedes Moné beat Julia Hart in 13 minutes. Women's Owen Hart Cup tournament quarterfinal match. Hurt Syndicate beat the Learning Tree by pinfall for the AEW Tag Team Championship. Opener of the pay-per-view part of the show, Will Ospreay beat Kevin Knight in 13-50. And then the two matches that were on the 0 hour, Nick Wayne and crew, Action Andretti and Leo Rush, who Jeremy very disrespectfully didn't add to this tag team scene, beat Air Fox and Top Flight in a trios match. And then Bowens defeated Max Caster. I guess he was the open challenge guy to come back and beat up his old buddy Max. Okay, so there are all the results. Now let's get to the questions that I had around this show. This is easy. Let's just go best match, worst match. In your opinion, best match on the card, worst match on the card.
Best match on the card is probably Fletcher and Briscoe, and the worst match on the card, I think I'm giving it to Bandido and Chris Jericho.
Okay, there you go. I will go Mercedes and Julia Hart. I guess it picked up, but that they struggled a little bit.
Sure.
Julia looked. They tried some things that they kind of had to slow motion their way through to make them work. There was even some confusion on the pinfall because it looked like Mercedes kind of leaned her hip one way and Julia Hart's shoulder may not have been all the way down, but we didn't see. So that would be mine. I agree with you on the best match of the show. Mm-hmm. What would you say was the second best match, Ospreay?
Either that or the main event. I'm gonna go with Ospreay and Kevin Knight, but my caveat was it was framed very predictably. Mm-hmm. There is a formula to a Will Ospreay match in which he's going to win, in which he gives the other guy a ton. Kevin Knight is a fantastic guy to give a ton to. It was a great looking match, but it was every babyface is going to give a lot to his opponent, and then he's gonna, he's gonna win. I think you have a great point on the Mercedes Moné and Julia Hart match. The only reason I picked the Bandido and Chris Jericho was that I think they kind of treated the audience like they were dumb.
And treated family members like they were dumb too.
Yeah.
All right. I think a lot of people will actually pick the triple threat match as well as a top match. I think that will get some votes.
Mm-hmm.
It
was a party match. It very much was. You can't treat it like it was like this high profile, very like top of the tippy top talent title match. And I think people wanted it to be that, and that's fine. It just wasn't.
I'm stealing this next question directly from the Rewatchables, the movie podcast from The Ringer. What's the most gifable moment on this show? Now, I have a few that I was thinking of, and if you have more, definitely add them. There was a moment in the FTR and Death Riders match where Claudio and Dash had their, I think it was Dash. No, maybe, I mean, not Dash, Dax. Where they had their foes in maybe Scorpion Deathlocks, and they were like mean mugging each other.
Yeah, they were the two legal guys, and they had two other guys in the Deathlocks, and yeah, they were angry faces.
Two angry bald guys staring in each other's eyes. I thought that could be a gifable moment. Bandido. Now, if gifs were 1 minute long,
yes,
Bandido's 1 minute suplex on Chris Jericho. Or maybe just the end when Jericho's legs were struggling and Bandido's body was struggling in this move. That could be one. Speedball Mike Bailey back flipping onto his knees on
painful.
the apron, the side of the apron there, the hardest part of the ring. Just that looked like hell. But also Omega. I guess Omega's his one-winged angel, his avalanche one-winged angel is actually a pretty cool move.
I wanted to congratulate Swerve for hitting a Swerve stomp and actually taking apart an announce table with a move.
That's a good one.
Because there have been many times where that announce table has not given on an impact move, and that looked very, very good.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Was there? I guess maybe the Bucks giving the BTE to Swerve at the end of that show to cause the pinfall.
I think I would give an honorable mention to Shelton Benjamin lawn darting Brian Keith all over the side of the ring while the audience is chanting, "We hurt people. We hurt people."
Yes, there you go. Biggest baby faces on the show, man.
Yeah.
All right. Now, a lot of times when we watch these matches, sometimes the matches are a little indulgent for our tastes. Now, we are not in the ring. We are not reading the crowd. That is what pro wrestling is. So maybe as a fan, something that is indulgent to us may not be to the wrestler, because the wrestler's looking at a bunch of different things, feeling the moment. And then there are also times where we're like, could have had a few more minutes of that match. What was the too long match and too short match for your tastes on this show?
I'm going to get a lot of trouble for this, but the triple threat with Omega, Speedball, and Ricochet was too long. It going 30 minutes was incredibly indulgent, but at the same time, I understand being a booker and promoter like Tony Khan and bringing in a new guy and having Ricochet, both, still relatively recent talents, and giving them a spotlight in a semi-main event as kind of a carrot for potential talent down the line, saying, this could be you if you are what I'm looking for in AEW. I get it, but I still thought you could have cut 5 minutes off of this match. I think it was about 5 minutes prior to the end of the match. I'm like, how long is this match been going?
Exactly.
And it was something. I think Will Ospreay and Kevin Knight could have gone longer, but I think given that, they're opening the show and the intention is to get the crowd hot and then get out of there, they did their job, and I get why it only went 13 minutes.
That was kind of the perfect length, I thought, to open the show. for me. As far as what match went too long, I think the Moné and Julia Hart match went too long. And I was actually talking about this with Dave on Friday. And I said, when you have first round matches of a tournament, they don't all have to be 25-minute masterpieces. It's a first round match. You save the masterpiece for the finals. And so this Mercedes and Julia Hart match, not that Mercedes had to squash her in any way, but it could have been like a definitive victory instead of, let's try and make Julia Hart super competitive. And Dave said, no, the whole thing is because they want Julia Hart to get back into the swing of things and be looked at as somebody. Okay, I think my way would have been better for this show. But I understand. So that would be mine. And then I think you might be surprised at my pick for the one that may have been too short. This show started off great with Ospreay and Knight. The Hurt Syndicate match and Learning Tree, we kind of knew. We'll have a question about matches that would actually probably be better for TV. That was probably one of them. And then I didn't like the Mercedes and Julia Hart match much. The Death Riders and Rated FTR, that match kind of kicked the show back into gear. And I almost thought that the match ended a little bit too early. I could see another 1.5 to 2 minutes to this one.
But they had so much meat on the bone after.
Yes, that was probably why they didn't get the extra times, because they had the full 5-minute angle at the end.
No, but that's fair. Like, it did kind of end, but I think there was that aspect of like nobody was there to like get the save, and you wanted that like it just ended because the baby faces were on the same page.
All right, I had this one as we were watching the show. I'm not sure there were all that many cameos, but what was the best cameo? The only one I can really remember is MJF smiling in the crowd, helping the Hurt Syndicate beat up. Not that he was necessarily needed, because they were dominating that match. Was there another cameo on?
Probably Hangman.
Hangman's a good one.
Yeah.
Actually, now that we think about it, in that main event, the main parts were the Hangman. So what's the best cameo? Hangman, the Bucks, or MJF?
I think Hangman was the driver to determining whether people were going to be okay with this show at the end. If Hangman didn't show up, or what he was doing or how he was acting wasn't something that people could chew on, or you and I could have a conversation with, and then people could kind of wonder going into Wednesday what is happening, I don't think we have the level of intrigue and conversation. If the Young Bucks had come out and taken out Swerve and Hangman was not a part of the equation at all, would you draw the conclusion that Hangman is going to get figured in eventually? Or was it better that Hangman was in the fray and then you cut back to him at the very end of the show as it's ending, as he's laying there lying against the ring steps and Swerve is in the ring kind of dying? Does that lead you to that conclusion better than Hangman not being there at all and you thinking, oh, I wonder if Hangman is going to be the guy right there?
Yes. I'm going to go with Matt Jackson's very, 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 very tight white tee. That dude was trying to show some of his physique off in that match, or when he made that cameo. They've been working out. Even at the end of the show, Nick decided to pull his t-shirt off. And
he ripped his vest off as if he was setting his baby free.
showed some pecs.
Yes,
he had to show off the new
there
pec.
Was the workout time needed to be appreciated on pay-per-view.
Yes. So yeah, actually, as it turns out, lots of cameos. Okay. If you could change one finish or one result on this show, what would it have been?
I think I was going between Bandido and Chris Jericho because I thought the finish was so dumb, but I'm going to go a little more substantial. I think it would have been fine if Mark Briscoe had beat Kyle Fletcher in this match, and it would have given some legitimacy to Mark Briscoe that he hasn't had in a while. You see Mark Briscoe, and you're like, you like Mark Briscoe, but you know Mark Briscoe is losing. One of these days, he has to win a match that you don't expect him to win, because it raises the stakes of him going forward and thinking, oh, this guy can win this match against so-and-so, because he's the kind of guy that can catch you. I wish Briscoe would have won this one, and then he would have faced the winner of Hangman and the mystery man.
I like that a lot. I think that is probably the right answer. I think a lot of people are going to say Swerve, right? They're going to say Swerve should have won the match. But again, I'm leaning towards they have a destination at All In where they really want this thing to happen. And I mean, I'm guessing we're going to get some sort of anarchy in the arena next month, where Moxley doesn't have to defend the title, and they're going to do that crazy match where it seems like somebody gets hurt for 8 weeks every time. So I think you're right, though. I think it would be Mark Briscoe beating Kyle Fletcher would have been cool. And you had a great idea, which is the only time Mark Briscoe can beat Kyle is just in tournaments. Like, he's a tournament guy, and that's how he beats him. And Kyle beats him every other time. Like, that would be kind of a cool thing, but didn't happen that way. So, all right. Next question is, which matches should have been on Dynamite or Collision instead? I think there's a couple. There's not only one that I would pick.
Adam Cole and Daniel Garcia.
Main event this Saturday, winner take all. That should have been, or should maybe the tail end, the last 30 minutes of the pre-show should have been this match.
Yeah, the argument you could have put, I've heard good things about the Crew and AR Fox and Top Flight, that the deal. I think there are about 3 matches that you could have put on there on Collision, but for whatever reason, star power, perception, you put them on the show, and it was a B-level they're B-level matches for a B-level show, and that was Mercedes Moné and Julia Hart, Bandido and Chris Jericho, and Adam Cole and Daniel Garcia.
I would have kept the Bandido match on this show just because the ROH title, if you're going to present that title as a big deal, it kind of has to be on the pay-per-view. But
I'm going to disagree with you, and I'll tell you why after you say.
Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead.
You don't do this match. You can do an ROH title match, but this match was insulting to the intelligence of the people watching it. And so if you're going to do this version of an ROH title, like, would you have done this in the main event of an ROH Supercard of Honor? Right? Like, is this how you finish the show? That to me is why I'm like, this was treated like a mid-card title on a mid-card show. And if you're trying to sell Ring of Honor as a brand, or you're trying to sell Bandido as a big-time star, I didn't think any of this did anybody any favors.
I mean, I would rather have them wrestle on the show that's going to get 100,000 buys instead of 10,000 buys or whatever.
I agree with you. I just don't think this was the match they should have done in front of 100,000 buys.
I am going to go with Julia Hart, Mercedes Moné. This is not even a Dynamite main event. This is a Dynamite, not top of the hour, 9 o'clock match. I also think the Hurt Syndicate and Learning Tree should have been the main event of Dynamite coming up on Wednesday. Like, that fits better there. And it's not like these matches were so good that the commercial breaks would have frustrated me. Because I would have said the same thing about Ospreay and Kevin Knight, except I don't want to see the commercials during that match. I want to watch the whole match. So those would have been my 2 picks for that. And I agree with the Adam Cole and Daniel Garcia one. That should have been the main event on Collision on Sunday or somewhere in the 0 hour.
Do you think next year that they can get away with putting on all 4 quarterfinal men's Owen Hart matches at Dynasty?
Just have all 4 of those be undercard matches?
Yes.
Well, but then what about the women?
You could do 1 or 2, but like, I think that right now you could do a pay-per-view in which 8 cards, in which you have the women's world title, you have the men's world title, and then you have 8
first round matches.
Yes.
That is very WWE 1993 King of the Ring tournament-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Also WWE King and Queen of the Ring tournament-ish.
You're either all in or you're not, you know? It's just like picking a couple matches and deciding, like, and calling the pay-per-view kind of tells you how important you think certain people are in this tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I would have to think about that. And I wonder if someone asked Toni about that, what he would say.
Yeah.
He would, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's a good problem to have, though, because I think the way that the tournament is booked this year, even though the women doesn't have the same depth, they still have some upcoming great stories that I think we're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the men's tournament, they're all those matches are pretty darn good. So yeah, I think you could definitely do it. All right, so next question for you. Were there any match of the year candidates on this show?
Unfortunately, no. And that's okay. Not every show's going to have them.
Yeah, I think there are 2 matches that, you know, how Dave always says, oh yeah, 15 years ago, these would have been match of the years. You got a couple matches, depending on how much you like that triple threat, which we didn't like it as much as some other people that I've seen. Yeah, but I agree with you. I don't think there's any match of the year candidates.
It was a fine main event, and we might look back on it as something that builds on future main events between the two. Because I 1,000 believe that Swerve Strickland is going to win the AEW World Title again
at some
in
point
the future. And when that happens, or for whatever reason, these 2 guys are going to get in the ring with each other again, and their previous matchups are all going to play into it. These guys are too smart to forget about what they've done before.
All right, what was the Toni Schiavone announcer moment of the show?
Oh, God, I wrote these down. I got to find these.
I have 2, and I know you have more, so let me do mine, and then you can do yours. Toni Schiavone, after FTR turns on Edgeland, or Adge, as you called him, Toni Schiavone asked if the turn was premeditated. Was this decision to beat up this man and give him our finisher premeditated or not? Come on, dude. And then he said, when Toni Storm came in with her Rocky-like entrance, he did like an old-timey boxing voice that was very nerdy and geeky and like almost unbelievable that he did it. I was like, you have more self-awareness than this. You know, people are going to make so much fun of you for attempting to do this that it's not a good idea. And he was like, nope, I'm going for it.
The one that I locked in on was during the Bandido and Chris Jericho match, when Chris Jericho was hunched over the ring in preparation for Bandido to do his 21-plex, and Bandido missed hitting the rope with his legs and tried a couple of times to just kind of reset, and then just fell down, and then they ended up doing a counter, to which Toni responded, a phenomenal counter to the 21 flex. And I was just like, oh God, he could have just no.
There was some interesting announcer moments, because you had that one where he tried to make something that was a botch, not a botch. Then you had other ones from Excalibur where the move wasn't as clean as usual, but the wrestler was selling like it was. And then Excalibur was saying like, oh, he didn't get all of it.
They didn't get all of it, or wasn't quite clean or anything like that.
Yeah, so weird.
When Toni Schiavone was excitedly exclaiming in the triple threat that we had gone 30 minutes, I'm like, I know. Let's take it home.
Okay, but you know why? You know what I was wondering when he said that?
Sure.
Because remember the Continental Classic or any of these matches, because the TV matches are only 20 minutes, and the fans get on AEW because the only time they do the time cue is like when there's 1 minute left, and it kind of catches fans out of nowhere. So I wonder if he was thinking about that. Like, they give us so much shit for these time cues, so I'm going to mention it.
I'm a fair man because I got my JR moment for you. And that is at the beginning, in the first match. He was talking about how he was so impressed with Kevin Knight's training and pedigree. And we all kind of pinged on it. And we're all like, wait, JR is paying attention to New Japan Pro Wrestling's LA Dojo? And Excalibur quickly jumps in on it. It's like, yeah, he did a lot of training at the LA Dojo. And JR quickly, correctly, oh, no, I was talking about when he was, hanging out with the Hart family. And I was just like, yeah, you would lock into that one, buddy.
I wonder if Stu ever stretched JR. He's like,
probably.
JR, you need to feel what this feels like so you can call it correctly.
Oh, got bully time for everybody.
Okay. Overbooked match or angle of the night. I think I know your answer to this one.
What is my answer to this one? I kind of want to know what you think it is.
I think you would have said the Bandido Chris Jericho thing. So we can explain it. So Chris Jericho uses a bat to hit Bandido with and knocks Bandido out. He then, instead of throwing the bat out of the ring like every heel does, or babyface when they want to get away with it, he goes back to where he got it, which was in the corner in between the steps and the ring post. And he's like struggling to put it back. You're like, dude, like, why are you doing this? Like, this is not normal. And so I thought he was doing it because this was basically him stalling so that Bandido actually kicks out. No, this was not why they were doing this. Instead, Bandido doesn't kick out. Bandido's mother and sister are ringside. They are hooping and hollering as if there was some evilness happening inside of this ring, some unfairness. This was like in spring training in Major League Baseball, they tested the ABS system where you could actually get a quick call on a ball or a strike. The hitter would like tap his helmet, or I think that's how you did it. But they were the human version of this. They were like, nope, this is cheating. I can't believe it. He's going to lose his mask. And so Aubrey goes over there. I think it was Aubrey, right? Was Aubrey?
Yeah, it was Aubrey.
Aubrey goes over there, and she's asking them. She's like, "Oh, what did you see? You're telling me like you saw something different." And then I think Bryce was the referee in the ring, and he looks at them, and they're like, "Oh, what did you see?" And so they're doing this whole song and dance, and so they restart the match. They didn't even go to the video board. They had this giant video board in every arena that they have wrestling in.
No instant replay.
No instant replay. They didn't even look at it or anything. And so then they restart the match. Bandido finally hits the... But actually, I missed the best part. Bandido's sister is jumping up and down after they announced they're restarting the match, like the mom and the sister, like
because they're ringside now.
They've jumped over the barrier, and so then, if we had an overacting award, they would win the overacting award. So they're jumping up and down, and then Jericho pulls the sister by the hair, and he leans over, which allows Bandido to hit the move and to beat Jericho to be the new ROH champion. And there was actually a moment that they had that was, actually kind of cool, but they wasted it for him screaming in the headset on the Spanish language announcing team instead of doing a promo in the middle of the ring.
It was almost like they wanted to have an Arena Mexico match and get like the Arena Mexico reaction. And in that aspect, I get it. But here are the issues here. Number one, Chris Jericho hits Bandido in the head with the baseball bat. Bandido, he who had multiple concussions, and then plays it up that he is out for an indeterminate period of time without any medical team coming out there. He's out for so long that Chris Jericho had a clear minute between hitting him and getting the pin that we call this out. Then it requires 2 fans from outside the ring area to tell a referee who was not there at the time not to go look at any footage or do anything other than, hey, we saw this thing, you need to restart this match. And because they found the proof of the weapon that they were suing, that was clearly the corroboration. No footage, no nothing, no anything. It just felt like they wanted to get to the end goal and stretch this out. You could have taken 5 minutes off this match with the amount of acting and delays and everything like that. We had an 18-minute match that really you could have done in 10. And it's fine. It's whatever. But, like, it was just bloated. It was a bloated concept that they stretched out, and they're going to get kind of what up for it.
I guess you could also say the main event thing was overbooked, but I think it's
a main event, though.
It was set to be that because you had the Hangman thing, which people thought was going to be the end. And no, we have to add more. We have to give you even more of a surprise. And it's the Bucks and Matt Jackson's medium-sized T-shirt. And so, like, I wouldn't. I mean, it probably was overbooked, but in order to tell the story that they were telling, that's what they chose to do. Now I see my friend, one of my favorite Twitter followers, Trish SP, who does a podcast. She's like so frustrated with this BCC storyline, and also the Hangman piece, because her thought was the Hangman chooses this road, right? He can choose revenge on Swerve, or he can choose to go after Moxley and help Swerve. So the redemption or the revenge storyline. And he kind of chooses to, not beat up Swerve. So that's a moment. And her comment is that they didn't even let that moment breathe because boom, right to the Bucks. And so that, that moment doesn't sit. So I could see that argument too.
I think the overbooked argument goes down to whether your preference is overbooked to set up future stories or overbooked to end a story. Because you had an overbooked story with Bandido and Chris Jericho that's essentially not going to really go anywhere. You had the title change. We're done. Maybe Chris Jericho tries to get the title back, but you're not going to really undo this and then give the title back to Chris Jericho. But on that other overbooked Swerve Strickland thing, you got the Bucks, you got Hangman, you had the Ops coming out there. I think you're setting up a number of different matches going into it. So overbooked for the sake of future progress or overbooked for the sake of closing down a story. It really depends on what you prefer.
All right, next question. We only got a couple more of these. Who gained the most from their opportunity, and who gained the least from their opportunity on this pay-per-view? This is not along the lines of the main eventers. Obviously, it's
sure.
There's other opportunities on this show. Is there a most and a least for you?
Oh yeah, Kevin Knight is my most gained opportunity. A week and a half ago, he was wrestling Jay White on Collision, and because Jay White was able to perform, he was given a great opportunity with Will Ospreay, both on Dynamite and now on the show. And a lot of people are finding out about Kevin Knight that didn't really know about him before. The dude is immensely talented, and the trajectory for him is immensely high going forward. For the least, man, I'm so sorry to say it, but Daniel Garcia, you are in deep, deep trouble, buddy.
Interesting. That's an interesting one. I'm going to agree with your Kevin Knight. I thought that was an awesome moment for him, though we were talking about it at Dave's. He's going away, so
right.
It's not. You wonder if they're going to be able to take advantage of this yet, or if they just ice him until he comes back from New Japan. I would try and take advantage of it until he's gone, and then let the announcers explain that he's going on he's going to Japan. You don't even have to talk about the tournament if you don't want to, but just he's going to be gone, but he'll be back.
I think he's going to be very protected in that Best of Super Juniors tournament.
And I would say the second person who I would say gained is probably Megan Bayne, because there were some questions about her, and I think she answered just about all of those questions. As for the least, I could see a Bandido argument, because I didn't think he was very good in this match, and their match previously on television I thought was better than this, but it also wasn't as booked or overbooked as it was. But I will probably go with Julia Hart. I'm a Julia Hart fan. I loved how she kind of recreated herself, even though I'm not into the spooky stuff for wrestling, but she absolutely did recreate her character after being the cheerleader and then being in the House of House of Black. This was not her finest moment. I'm not sure what they could have done, because it's very clear she was losing. She's not a baby face. Mercedes is kind of in the middle, so she's a heel. There was really no way for her to really be the underdog and get something as the heel, I think. So I think this is kind of bad matchmaking. I wouldn't have put these two together in the first round. So I'm not sure what Julia could have done, but yeah, that she would be mine.
I got a question for you that I just thought of right now, and gonna catch you on the spot a little bit. This was the first AEW pay-per-view debut for both Kevin Knight and Speedball Mike Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
Going forward, you have to pick one as the one you're backing. Who's your guy?
And we can't pick Ricochet.
It's not his first pay-per-view.
No, I only said that so I could play the bite again. I would go with Kevin Knight just because I like upside. I like younger talent.
He has absolutely more upside, I believe.
Speedball's going to grow on me. I know that for sure. He's going to grow on me. He's such a dork, but he's going to grow on me because there is earnest effort from him. Mm-hmm. Like there's no like bravado BS. He's like, I need to have this great match so that the crowd can like love me and appreciate me. And that stuff is always going to get over. Even if I don't really love his style all the time. Mm-hmm. The man pulled out a Danielson crane kick in a match and Ricochet ran into it just like Johnny did in the movie. It was amazing. I was like, wow, these guys really studied this tape here. 41-year-old tape of Karate Kid 1.
The reaction up and then the crumple down.
Yes. I'm sure they're fans of Cobra Kai, which is probably where they got the idea to do it, because Cobra Kai just finished their last season. And that was the reason why Johnny was so
Speedball's connection to the audience is absolutely authentic and wholesome.
Yeah, totally. Big ups to Speedball. He's gonna get on my nerves a lot because he is such a dork, but he's also gonna win me over because that's just what he does. Like that's his goal, and so I like that about him.
He's like the yin to Darby Allin's yang. Like they're both baby faces, but they're so completely different that I kind of want them as a tag team together. Where it's just like Darby's like, I can't stand you, and Speedball's like, why? I like you.
All right, last three here.
Sure.
Best usage of video could be a video package, could be some sort of recap thing that they did. I think this one's actually pretty easy because it's probably the Toni Storm Rocky montage. And the reason why I thought about this is because I don't usually think all that highly of the AEW video packages, but when I rewatched the Double or Nothing from 2019, I thought they had some strong ones. I was like, wow, I forgot about these. The way that they told the stories of the grudges, because it was back then, it was really about the fights and the grudges and less about, these crazy stories. But I liked that. And so I would love to see more of that. Like, here's the reason that they're fighting instead of like some of the goofy stuff that they do show, but we'll go with the goofy stuff is what won me over on this one, which was Tony.
Did they do a countdown show for this?
Not that I know of, or at least I didn't hear about it.
Because I easily would have been fine with one match being taken off this card and having like a 90-second video package for every match, just kind of like hitting the beats of what's important going into it. I know that they don't want to do that, and they don't want to be WWE, but there's something to just being given an opportunity to be like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's important. Blah, 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 blah.
All right, let's guess the Dave Meltzer star ratings here. By the way, Maria says that yes, they did have a countdown show.
Excellent.
Thank you. It wasn't hyped from what I remember, but
I will look on YouTube for it and then try and see if I have the energy to rewatch it now.
All right, guess the big Dave star ratings. We don't have to go through every match, but I'm interested in a few of them. What do you think the Ospreay Kevin Knight rating is going to be?
4.5.
That's what I was leaning. I was leaning right at 4.5. What do you think the Timeless Toni Storm and Megan Bayne match is going to be?
4.25.
I was leaning 3 3/4. So we'll see. We'll see.
4-ish, yeah. I think he was pretty positive on it, so I think he is willing to be generous. But yeah, now you say it, I think maybe 4. I'll temper that to a 4.
What do you think about Kyle Fletcher and Mark Briscoe?
What do you think?
I think 4 3/4.
I was going to say 4.5 again.
Yeah, we're close.
Yeah.
And then what do you think about the 3-way Omega Ricochet Speedball?
4 1/4.
I'm gonna go 4 3/4. And since I said the name Ricochet again, yeah, I'm gonna go 4 3/4.
I know he really likes that guy in those matches, and there was a lot to like in that match. I just couldn't take parts of it seriously. Yeah. And when I got to a point like, oh, he
kind of got mad at us when we were making fun of the goofy spots.
I mean, it got cute. It got PWG-ish. And yeah, totally. I'm sorry, Kenny Omega is not a PWG level wrestler. When you put him in a pay-per-view, I expect this is one of the best wrestlers in the world. And I don't feel like I got that version of Kenny Omega in this match.
I think as I was watching it, he definitely paced himself, but I knew he was coming strong for the end. But yeah, there was lots of moments where he's just chilling on the outside. Yeah, I'll let these guys do their thing.
He knew that there was a queue around 20 minutes that it was like, okay, it's go time. And then he had a really great match. But there was a lot of fat in that match up to that point that, it was a lot of Ricochet and a lot of Mike Bailey doing the work in that match. And that's fine. It was their spotlight show.
You know what? We forgot the most, the what should win the most gifable is when Ricochet was on the headset and Mike Bailey super kicked him in the face.
That was fantastic.
That's probably the most gifable. We screwed that one up. Okay.
We recovered though.
Yeah. All right. What about the main event? What do you think gives the main event?
4.5 again.
I'm going 4 1/4.
Yeah.
All right. Last question here, and we'll get out of here. All the stuff that we just saw on this show. What do you think is the most important thing to open up Dynamite with in a video package or an interview recapping things? However they do it, because they do it in different ways sometimes. But what is your major thing that you want the fans tuning in on Wednesday to see? Because you're like, we know that we're going to get about 750 to 800,000 fans to watch the beginning of this show. What's the most important thing to show them on Wednesday?
If you wanted the most amount of intrigue going into that match, I think you start with Hangman and the mystery opponent, and then you unravel the show from there. You go with Swerve. You figure out what's going on with that. You have the Death Riders coming in, like crowing about they don't have any title contenders right now. This whole deal. You just unspool the whole thing, starting with Hangman and whoever the mystery opponent is.
I would start with Moxley and the Death Riders walking in the arena, and all 5 of them kind of walking forward, and then you pan out a little bit, and then you see the Young Bucks walking in with them.
There you go.
And then you have Tony Schiavone doing his "what the heck is going on here" gimmick, and then you show them walking in. Tony Schiavone has a cow, and then you lead into with Excalibur describing what happened in the main event of the show. And I would want that entire show to have those 7 characters in some small segments, kind of.
You're talking about the Death Riders and the Bucks?
And then by the main event, we get some storyline advancement explanation of what's going on. That's what that would be my entire sort of
definitely the hook, right? Like Swerve, Hangman, Moxley, the Young Bucks, whatever's going on with that is very clearly the direction that we're going in. And my takeaway was that we're going to get the Ops and some combination of people in Anarchy in the arena. And then we get the Ops and the Death Riders for the trio titles and All In. Like that is kind of what I meant by unspooling, by just having that Hangman match. You figure out who the mystery opponent is. Is it somebody in the Death? It could be Claudio for all we know. Like that could be a guy that they put as the mystery guy. And it plays into this whole story as well. Whether Hangman ends up winning or losing on that side as a result, we all kind of think that Will Ospreay is the guy to win the whole thing. So whoever the guy on the other side is, it can all be predicated on the stories they're laying out from the first Dynamite. Unfortunately, they didn't even advertise anything on the show or give us any idea what to look forward to on Dynamite.
My idea for the mystery person, and we've heard Josh Alexander, we've heard Jeff Jarrett. My idea was Nick Jackson, and that was even before they'd returned tonight.
What about Jeff Perry?
Well, what I want is I want them to screw Hangman, and he loses, actually, because then that creates the fire for wherever they're going. And then in another scenario, like Swerve's got beef with these guys and Hangman's got beef, and it's like the enemy of my enemy is actually my friend kind of deal. And so that could be used to explain it. But yeah, I want the Bucks, I want the Death Riders, I want Hangman, I want Swerve, I want all of those folks
get Samoa Joe in there
in segments explaining what's going on. And because if these are your top angles for your next 2 shows, and you said, this pay-per-view is a little bit of an advertisement for All In, then let's start telling these stories, because I think they need to be unique and they need to be good. And the reason why, and not that they need to copy WWE, but I watched SmackDown opening promo with CM Punk and Paul Heyman, and they have this idea of the favor. And so then they get to the end of the show, main event segment is Roman Reigns trying to get whatever the favor is. Paul Heyman doesn't know. Seth Rollins comes out. He's making fun of Roman Reigns. Then Punk comes out and explains the favor. These 3 dudes for 15 minutes didn't do jack shit the entire time, but they were so great at not doing jack shit while in the ring explaining this angle.
Right.
The angle wasn't fantastic, but they're such big stars that they were able to make it work. But the idea of like the hook, because that show is 3 hours. That's a long
hook.
A
bloated show.
Oh my God. Like it took forever, but I was like, okay, I could read the spoilers, but I know these guys are going to do a good job in the ring. So let's create, you don't have to do that every week. Dynamite would get really boring if that's how you did it. But this is the angle to do that, where you start the beginning of the show and you keep fans waiting until the end, and at the end you give them
you start
story
gratifying them. The other thing that I think is interesting is if we're getting a couple matches out of this main event that happened tonight, which is potentially Anarchy in the arena, and then this Young Bucks Swerve Hangman tag at All In, you're also gonna have to work through Swerve mending fences with Samoa Joe, because Swerve and Samoa Joe was the title match that Swerve beat Samoa Joe for that title in the first place. So putting them together in some kind of possibility when they came out there, it's kind of like enemy of my enemy is my friend thing, but you also have that kind of narrative structure that you're going to have to navigate.
You know what? Samoa Joe is kind of the vet's vet. Yeah. And I think he would see Swerve beating him as like a sign of respect. And so I think they leave it like that.
But they still have to like just get to that. Like they can cross that very easily, but there's a respect factor of like you do have to at least.
And it wasn't that long ago that Swerve's entire character was that he had beef with everybody, teammates and opponents.
It'll be really interesting to see the success of the Swerve team in Blood and Guts versus how well they do in Anarchy in the arena, if that's like a growth factor that they want to show with Swerve.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. All right, so I think we got through it. I liked the way that we kind of weaved our way through the entire show. It wasn't just recap and match to match. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think there's a lot of people who do that style very well. I wanted to do a little bit differently, and I think we did a good job. You and I will be back after Double or Nothing. It's the All In show that I probably am going to need someone to hop in and do with you, but we'll figure that out. We got months.
We'll find somebody to go all in with me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. So thank you to everybody who was in the chat. I loved seeing the names. You know, Maria and Fernando.
Thank you guys.
They're in here on a lot of these shows, and I just appreciate them so much. I love seeing their names when they pop up, so I just want to give them a little bit of an extra shout out. Of course, Lady B, who I am trying to just agree for me to just send her a mic just for the possibility that she is interested in doing a show.
Collaborative possibilities with Lady B.
I've already pitched her, and I gave her a 1-second pitch. But I really appreciate the folks who show out, because it's so much fun to see those names over and over. And I love reading their comments because it gives me an idea on what works with other folks as well. So, and also thanks to you. Thanks for being here. I know you had a long couple of days, so hopefully you get some rest and you can
watch so much New Japan Pro Wrestling. So much.
There you go. All right, and you and Steven will be back on Thursday at 5:30 Eastern, right?
5:30 Eastern. We'll be talking about what happened in Japan this past week and previewing that Windy City show on Friday night.
And for the people listening on audio, that is a YouTube exclusive show, so you can actually just go to our YouTube page and check all of their shows out on demand. And, you know, kind of a thing with YouTube, I don't actively watch a lot of YouTube videos, but I do like putting it on in the background because I like to hear the voices. And if you are like that as well, give Speaking of Strong Style a shot. So, all right.
I got one last thing for you, Garrett. If people wanted to talk about the AEW shows with us in the Discord, how would they want to do that?
Oh, they could email me, gg@fightgamemedia.com, if you want to come through to the Discord. It is private because we like to keep it very safe and very cool, and we like cool people in it. It is not a free-for-all. If you are interested in doing that, you can send me an email and we can get you in there. We have 2 rules: no hate speak and no trolling, and that's it, really. So shoot us an email and you can come through.
Yeah, Fernando, send an email to GG and we'll get you in there.
All right. For Jeremy, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.